Hello, live stream.
Hey, everybody. Well, it might be a delay, but whatever. Hi, everyone.
Warming up.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody. Maybe. Hello.
Yeah, YouTube's weird. So it only goes to our subscribers. And once you get over a certain number of subscribers, YouTube Live goes everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just part of the live anything. But at this point, it's only to the people that subscribe. So, and that's not a big number.
Yep, got it.
It's okay. I don't mind.
Building an infrastructure.
Yeah, man.
So thank you, Patreon and YouTube, for allowing us to do that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I know there's there's like Rumble is trying to be a competition, and Odyssey. Those are other platforms that want to compete against YouTube.
Oh, Odyssey they run some of the radio stations in town.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
AU.
I thought it was ODYSSE.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure though. I know it's like a YouTube competitor.
Yeah.
Of sorts. I think it's like a combination of YouTube and Patreon, kind of.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I know that Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying use it. So.
All right, you ready to rock on the official?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I got a special guest for you. I'm actually really excited to have him because we just happened to run into each other the other night. I was like, bro, I want you on the podcast. So here with us today is Ted Hefko.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Ted. Thanks for joining us. And, of course, James over here, my co-host.
Hi, James.
Hello,
James Keene. So Ted Hefko is a New Orleans musician and a multi-instrumentalist. If I could read off a list of accolades, he's a singer, a songwriter, a band leader for Ted Hefko and the Thousandaires, which is such a funny, I love that name, the Thousandaires. He's a woodwind player for saxophone, clarinet, and flute, apparently, we were just saying before we started rolling, and guitar, does a lot of that. And I think, as far as I understand, I think your job is gigging musician.
That's all I do.
That's what you do? That's amazing. How did you get to that point, and what did you do before you were, specifically just a gigging musician?
I had a paper out when I was 12. Let's start with that.
For real? You really did?
Sure.
Wow. That's impressive. I don't think I know anyone who's
And
I did papers for one summer.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Did McDonald's for a season and saved up and went to Jazz Fest when I was a junior in high school and got my McDonald's money.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So wait, how long have you been here in New Orleans then?
I moved in '94. I
Wow.
visited in '92. I think we talked about that the other night.
Did we? Okay. Hey, I was lit.
I hosted for a band from Chicago.
Okay.
It was friends of my dad's girlfriend, really.
Oh, okay.
And they'd come up to Madison, which is 3 hours from Chicago, and do a show. And they would send me one off of the poster, and I would print it up at Kinko's. This is what, I'm dating myself, I know. And I printed them up, and they gave me, and my recollection is getting $75 or something. And I had to print, and whatever was left was mine, or maybe they covered the expenses too. I don't remember, but at that time it was a pretty good amount of money. Covered the town with posters, and then they'd come and play a little club, and back then people weren't so crazy about ID checks. And I would play a couple songs with them, a couple on guitar and a couple on sax, and party with them afterwards. And
you're in high school at this point?
I was 15, 16, yep.
Wow. And what just bands that were coming through town? Or
It was one band from Chicago. It was a big Afrobeat band called Damba 8, and they were in a way friends of my dad's. Chicago people. And then they did refer me, and I did some gigs, some of those for another band too that I don't remember as well. But they wanted to come for Jazz Fest in '92, and they were friends with Paul Seabar and the Milwaukeeans, and we all kind of went down together. I tagged a ride with them, and then I stayed at the youth hostel, and I bought a ticket for every day Jazz Fest, $9 a piece.
Holy shit!
And I stayed at the youth hostel. I think that was $12 a piece per night.
Wow!
I stayed for the whole Jazz Fest. Got my teachers to sign off on it, and after that I was ready to move there. I loved it.
Wow. So that immediately it spoke to you. You were like, this is a place for me. And you've been here ever since?
I went back and finished high school, and I moved.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is did you finish high school in Chicago, or am I misunderstanding that?
No, Madison.
Oh, you were in Madison.
North of Chicago, yeah.
Fantastic.
That band was from Chicago. But, Chicago to Madison, you won't notice if you're not from that part of the country, but that's your airport. It's not that far.
We're familiar with you. We've actually played in Madison and Chicago. My mom's from Kenosha.
Oh, okay, right.
And James
I'm from Illinois as well. So
if you're from Kenosha, you go to the Milwaukee airport.
Exactly.
If you're from Madison, you might take a bus back then to Chicago to catch your airplane, and so it was close, close enough that all of the blues players went and played Madison. My dad met them all when he was in college. Muddy Waters, everybody.
Wow.
So Madison's just the next town up.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big.
When I was in high school, and again, people didn't card like they do now. I saw Sun Seals and Luther Allison and Albert Collins and Buddy Guy and Johnny Guitar Watson, little venues.
That's a big blues is big in the Chicago area. So.
Oh yeah, all those guys moved up to Chicago. They didn't want to stay in Mississippi for the rest of their lives.
who
yeah,
does?
I know, right? Despite their promotional campaigns to come visit.
Visit Mississippi.
Yeah, right. So blues spoke to you really early on because that's kind of what your predominant. What I've seen is like that's a predominant genre for you that you.
That's true. Well, rock and roll first. When I was a little kid, I remember they had the diner we'd go to at the jukebox, and they'd have Bill Haley and the Comics.
Really?
Rocking around the clock on the jukebox. I just thought that was great. I just thought rock and roll was amazing. And then I remember seeing some little clip of Elvis on the TV, and I said, "Mom, I love that guy." And she says, "Well, he's dead." And who is that? It was about 3 or 4, and I remember, it's like a flashbulb memory. Mm-hmm. And then I remember, I think it was 81 that Chuck Berry went on the Grammys, probably got a Lifetime Achievement or something, and he did the banana peel and all that. Now, that guy right there. So I always loved rock and roll. My parents split up when I was about 10, and then I just would peruse my dad's record collection. I was old enough to put a record on myself, but he put on a record of Champion Jeff Dupree from New Orleans with Aretha Franklin's band, which is, I call it the Kingpins. King Curtis was on sax, and Cornell Dupree, and Jerry Jemmett, and usually Bernard Purdy, but not on that record. It's Oliver Jackson. But I went crazy for that record when he put that on. I was in the bathroom or something when it first came on in my room. I came jumping out, and I skipped the record. And then once I saw that he had that, I just kept flipping through to find stuff. But that's still my favorite record. Champion Jack Dupree. He came out in the 40s in New Orleans. He lived in the same orphanage as Louis Armstrong, although he's a little younger.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, the Colored Waifs home, right?
Yeah. George Ingmeyer did one of these. He had a New Orleans Calling podcast on Champion Jake Dupree, and I learned a lot from that I didn't know. But he moved to Europe in the early 60s, I think, and he didn't come back till 91. He had such a rough life in New Orleans. And so he finally came back. He didn't want to, and then he came for Jazz Fest here, and he played Chicago Jazz Fest, and it was different. Mm-hmm. But when he was a kid, he was just, his parents were killed by the Klan, and he ended up in an orphanage.
Oh my gosh.
So he was just scared. They had a clip in there, and he's talking about being in Denmark in a bar, and he's sitting in the back, and someone says, "You can go to the bar and get a drink, yourself." So he was scarred by that, and he just lived in Europe his whole life, pretty much.
I mean, I can't blame him.
No, not at all. Yeah. I didn't know that
that's
aspect.
That's so recent too. Like, I mean, we think of that as being a long time ago, but that's really just
it's
happened.
A blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah,
we're not even not even two generations away.
No. My son is black, obviously. Mm-hmm. His grandparents sat on the back of the bus. My in-laws when they were kids. They remember having their dad called boy and stuff. It's not very long ago.
Yeah.
It's it's mind blowing to think about, especially in a city like this, where you can kind of see the effect that the culture has had on just the entirety of existence here, and just thinking how just shortly ago we were in such a different place.
Well, I think my mom was born in 50, and I think she has quite a whole childhood before the Civil Rights Act. Yeah. Like memories of segregation.
Both my parents grew up in northern Wisconsin, Marshfield. And both of them can easily remember the first time they met a black person. My dad said, "Well, this kid came from the circus, and we had fun playing with him." And my mother remembers going on to Milwaukee for something and seeing a black garbage man, and he was nice to her. And they can each. And neither of them has any prejudice at all, but they can both easily remember the first time.
Because it was foreign to their environment of
they grew up in a little town in Wisconsin. There's
white people.
Just all white,
Wow, that's really interesting. So that something about that music spoke to you, and you're saying rock and roll, true, like classic, not classic
rock and roll,
but rock and roll.
Rock and roll, yeah. I still love it. I still love those guys. I love Johnny Cash. I Little Richard, and Jerry Lee Lewis too. And Little Richard, I didn't realize had put out these great reprise sides in the '70s that never took off, where he does Proud Mary and stuff like that, and it's just like John Fogerty has to have to love that, because I mean he owned it. He just like, this is how you wanted this to go, kind of sound.
That's dope. I bet that's a great.
I've never. That would be very interesting.
It's so good. He's got Chuck Rainey on bass and some of these great '70s players, and like, I didn't realize that he had turned a corner like that. I'm always admire musicians that can turn a corner or turn two corners, and most people. There's a lot of people that are really successful, but they just got that one little moment.
That's true. Yeah.
They don't pivot.
Well, pivoting sometimes there's a risk there, but I think the reward can be super great.
Yeah.
I mean, not that this is in the same vein at all, but Lil Yachty, who I've never listened to before, that's a rap hip hop person, just released a prog rock record. That's crazy. Have you listened to it, James?
I've not. No.
It's fun.
I did see that though.
It's like, I love prog rock. It is prog. All the way. It's insane. And it's not really rap. He's like legit singing. There's a lot of effects on his vocals, but I mean, it's really. And I think Questlove had posted about it originally. He's like, this is the most amazing pivot I've ever seen from like any artist.
Yeah.
And based on like what he was and what this is.
I mean, Jerry Lee Lewis, '60s country period. Y'all listen to that?
I have heard some Jerry Lee country.
He just is an amazing country singer.
Wow.
Yeah, he's got. You don't think of that when you think of him in the '50s. To me, he's maybe in my little rock pantheon. He's number 6 or something for rock and roll.
Yeah.
But his country vocalist, he's a great vocalist by the time he's probably 40 by the time he's doing that or something.
It's similar to Elvis with the gospel era, and he had a bit of a country era too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I love late period Elvis.
Yeah.
White leather.
the Vegas stuff, or what?
Yeah, when he first goes to Vegas before he got kind of worn out there, and
it's like Live in Hawaii, right?
They did some videos.
Starts doing the suit, the big.
He's got a big leather suit on, and he's freed of his movie contract, which he hated. He came to hate that, and he just picks whatever he wants. He does Bridge Over Troubled Water.
Oh yeah, that's
Kentucky Rain. I love that cut.
Yeah.
In the Ghetto.
We used to do Never Been to Spain.
Never Been to Spain.
Yeah, his version of that.
I love that.
Fantastic cut. Yeah, fantastic version of that song.
I mean, and by that point, I don't know. He's the best vocalist on record by that point. He's just like, who has that kind of power he has, and perfect pitch. You can do the ballad, you can do the up-tempo stuff.
I haven't seen that movie yet, but I hear it's really good.
Yeah,
there's one that's just the way it is. And they've got a lot of concert footage.
Oh, really?
I was talking about the new one that came out. I
saw that.
Yeah, but
I've heard great things. I haven't seen it either, though.
Nobody can have the charisma of him, and whoever they pick to do it, it looks kind of silly. It's like Joaquin Phoenix trying to be Johnny Cash. You're not big enough of a.
Yeah.
You don't have the. You're not going to have the gravitas.
Oh, so you didn't like that movie?
No, it's good. It was cute. I mean, and telling his love story with June Carter, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
And the Elvis thing is cool because they set the record straight on some things. Like he wouldn't let anybody call him the king of rock and roll, and famously pulls Fats up at some press conferences. Fats out there like, no, this guy, not me. Like that's how he was, and he really did grow up with those guys, and had a huge amount of respect for the black music scene in Memphis, and they loved him too. He was their little buddy.
It was the media. It was kind of one of the first things that the media hyped into turned into a steamroll train. Was what the.
It wasn't something that he was happy about. He was embarrassed by that for sure.
And he was like the first pop star essentially of of celebrity.
Yeah.
Of that level.
Yeah, I mean Frank Sinatra before that maybe, but.
Yeah, I guess, but I guess it's fair. But I think of.
The Rat Pack at the Sands was like huge. It was like crazy.
True, and I guess
it was like the Beatles.
And they had that idolization, but I think Elvis then.
He eclipsed it for sure.
Yeah, with the advent of radio and then television, and like magazines.
And then he had his whole movie career.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it went downhill slowly, but there's some cool ones up front.
Sure. And then I obviously the Rat Pack had films and like decent ones. But I still think of Elvis as pioneering that like the celebrity pops, like obviously, and there were Ella Fitzgerald and other people. There were celebrity musicians before that in a capacity that were similar, but he eclipses them, and then it's Beatles. That's how I kind of see
I'd say Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, then Elvis, then the Beatles, and then what?
All downhill from there.
What happens between that and Michael Jackson, who's the big one in between?
But I think there are people that start to like if you look at Elton, but there's like an Elton John becomes a big persona, and then yes, of course Michael Jackson, and then but like later Motley Crue, those I know there's like that, and then we had Backstreet Boys and Sync and Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears is like an Elvis type of person.
But I think the thing that's interesting to me is seeing the way that those people were covered, or the way that they were followed by the general public, maybe not even the media. It's like it kind of all snowballed and started from those few individuals at the beginning there, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it's like the idea of people following a person that way outside of like a world leader wasn't really a thing before then.
Well, sure. They had the bands, but until you really had good microphones, the singer was featured on a couple songs, and it was the big band leader that was the star.
Yeah.
Like Benny Goodman or Glenn Miller or something.
Yeah, Artie Shaw, all this. Yeah,
you couldn't have
orchestra.
You couldn't really think of it that way until Sinatra, where you really had somebody working a microphone and they're the name on the marquee. It's not Tommy Dorsey featuring Frank Sinatra, and probably a couple female vocalists and whatever else. It's just him on his own, and then.
Yeah, that's a good point. I maybe have to reorganize that. I guess Frank Sinatra was that person in a way as well.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Well, it's harder to have that, use the word gravitas, and I think that's a great word for it. It's hard to have that, like that image and that thing that is part of like what Elvis was. It's like that, the thing that built that, the machine that built those personas didn't exactly exist, and it was in development in that time. So it's like hard to compare a little bit. But it's like the style of having celebrity, if you want to use it as like
they didn't really have that yet. I mean, and he doesn't know when he's doing that. He's not cashing in on anything. Playing black lesbians' music and researching it to all of this blues like that, and then covering it. Nobody would have thought, well, if I do that, I'll be really famous, and I'll mix it with bluegrass. There's no.
Yeah.
It's just that's what he loved.
Mm-hmm. He was just doing his thing, and people were assessing it and reassessing it and putting a label and a title on it as it went. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what
he did. What he loved, and he did the work, and he knew that music. Yeah. They say even by the time he was 19, it was like encyclopedic knowledge of blues music. But it's just they were like older people that studied that were impressed by him even when he was a teenager already.
The reason that I meant in conversation, just in my mind, comparing to Britney Spears is also the control aspect of like Colonel Tom Parker.
There you go. Yeah.
Like the taking away of their adolescence or something, their arrested development that they have, right? And they have they never really transition to that adult on their own.
I think of that more like Michael Jackson.
Absolutely as well.
Example.
But he kind of. There wasn't somebody. Well, maybe there was somebody managing his funds. I mean, I obviously had a money manager, but I think he was. He was
truly lost.
Yeah.
And Britney is like Michael in the sense that she was on that track from the time she was 10 or something. She was at Disney World.
Yeah, I think it was like 8 actually.
She was a
Mickey Mouse.
Mouse House. Yeah.
So her and her family intended to do that to her.
She was built by the House of Mouse.
I think Elvis kind of stumbled into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, and the transition from him just being a guy that loved Woody Guthrie and stuff to being a star, that was in under a year, and all of a sudden, he's in dangerous situations where he can't get out of the venue and stuff like that.
It's so wild to think that somebody has that there's like a power or something there, there's a concentration of attention to them, Like how people were taking axes to the stage to cut his cord, right? This is Bob Dylan at the folk festival.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was when he transitioned from the acoustic folk to the electric, and he played it at that festival. I think whatever folk Newport, yeah. And somebody rushed the stage with an axe to cut. It's like, what? This you're in.
It's a volatile period. I mean, more so than it is the last.
Sure, but how?
Years.
What I'm curious, I try to think about the person who has such emotion from that, who's so overcome with the desire or the impulse to rush to the stage with an axe or to threaten Bob Dylan's life. Who are those people?
I don't know how that works.
How does that, and how does somebody, how are they imbued, the artists themselves, with such, like there's some sort of energy there? How does that happen when it's just you're just making? I mean, obviously.
I think in his case again, there's an innocence to it. Like I just love old Woody Guthrie songs, and then he gets to loving these Chicago blues kind of guys, Mike Bloomfield up there and stuff, and to play with him, and he didn't really realize that it was going to get that reaction at some level. But he's also kind of a contrarian too.
Oh, for sure.
I think he had specifically Bob Dylan. I think he had the air, the air about him that allowed people to kind of buy into his ether, if you will, like the vibe that he put out, for lack of a better word to use there, was something that people were really ready to buy into. And then whenever that thing changed, I think a lot of people took it kind of personally.
Right.
No, I understand that. As we were talking about people pivoting, sometimes that doesn't go well.
My dad and his family loved to sing when I was growing up, pre-Bob Dylan folk music, like Kingston Trio and Peter, Paul and Mary and stuff like that. And then you hear the Dylan, and my dad tells me about this when he was in high school. His little group of guys singing those kinds of songs, or Simon and Garfunkel or something, and then you put on the Dylan record, and people are going, what? Like, the way that he's going about singing is so different.
Yeah.
And we make fun of it in some ways now, but it's different. It's decadent, it's rhythmic, it's not supposed to be pretty. And then, everybody imitated it after that, whether it's...
Sure.
It almost created Americana.
Jagger or Jimi Hendrix, and they're like pretty clearly, I think, most of the punk rock.
Yeah.
Like, where do you get that from? You have this guy that's not acting like a great singer all the time. He's just
that's
kind of speak singing. He's playing with the words, and by the inflection of them changing the meaning of it, he's kind of acting it out.
Yeah, I think Dylan has said, when people comment on his singing, he goes, well, the note's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
In the passage.
I love it. I love the Blood on the Tracks where he's hitting these quarter tones, and he's consistently hitting them on, and like he must have intended it at some point. I was born too late. And it's the character is that upset, he's embodying. There's something to it, I think, and kind of has like an Indian raga quality to me. Some of that record.
And it plays to the nature of subjectivity of music. Is like, what is good or bad. The objectivity melts away when we look at it like that. If it impacts you, and maybe that's what I was getting at. Maybe that subjectivity is what motivates these people. Drives them to a mania of sorts, or affects you in a positive way, like you said. If you like Blood on the Tracks. You
ever see this "We Are the World" outtake of Dylan trying to get his line?
No, I don't think so.
So "We Are the World," you guys are a little younger than me, so forgive me. Came out, I want to say '85.
Yeah,
and
I know.
In a way, it's the last hurrah of the '60s. Like, Reagan's been president, and we're not going to get Democrat in there, so we have to get into that. But they've also got this generational thing. They've got Ray Charles there. They've got Willie Nelson. They've got
Michael Jackson's in that.
Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie wrote the song.
Yeah.
And Quincy Jones is producing it, and they got people that were kind of forgettable, like Kenny Loggins involved. I shouldn't.
I like Kenny Loggins.
Bruce Springsteen is there. Sure. Carly Simon.
She's a little more forgettable.
Maybe so.
I like Carly Simon. I mean,
she certainly is a cutie.
Yeah.
I don't remember the music that well, but there was an intergenerational thing happening there. Anyways, but there's this, they just would have a couple of cameras. They have the feed of Dylan trying to get his line, and they want to have this idealistic thing. They want to have that something like "Blowing in the Wind" or something. This is their big meaningful song they're going to have, and it's a video, and raise money for starving children in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got to have Dylan. And all those other people, Dylan is what makes it be that thing, right? And then, of course, he never heard the song before, and he's sitting there he just keeps staring, and he's only got one sentence to sing. And you can't see anybody else on the camera. It's not like they set up a whole bunch of cameras. There's one VHS shot of him with the paper, and occasionally Quincy walks on stage, into the shot. Mm-hmm. And then at some point he goes, well, he just keeps looking at his sentence on the page, confused and trying it again. And he says, well, could you play it again on the piano, Steve? And you look back and you realize in the booth behind him is Stevie Wonder with big braids. So he had braids with beads in it back then.
Yeah.
And so there's, I just called to say, I love you, Stevie Wonder era.
Yeah.
And anyway, so there he is, and you realize Stevie Wonder's in the background, and that Bob knows him well enough to say Steve. He doesn't say Stevie. And that seems funny. And then you hear Quincy off, and he's coaching him, and you know that Carly Simon and Kenny Loggins, everybody's over here somewhere.
Yeah.
But you don't see any of those people, And then he gets his take. And it's just, how he is the timing is just like uppercut, bam, like Dylan gets the rhythm that he wants for that thing. And it's profoundly good when he hits his rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Never that it's perfectly in tune, but he just swings like crazy when he gets his cut.
Sure.
So then Quincy says, you got it, that's it. And he comes on and little, what's his name, Lionel Richie starts to walk towards, because he's producing too, I guess. And Quincy's standing there with Dylan, and he goes, that's the take. And Bob's like, well, if you say so. And he goes, oh, I know so. And then Dylan goes, well, I know you do, because you're Quincy Jones, is the implied parentheses. and then Lionel Richie comes in and gives him this big bear hug thing, and it's a little, it's probably not something Dylan's used to. He's kind of like this. And Lionel's like a foot taller than him, and he's got him in this. He's like, a little like more sensitive guy than Dylan or something.
Yeah.
And then that's it makes the song. It's so funny.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. I'll have to check that out. I'm sure it's on
Other people just hate it. I love it. I just love the juxtaposition, and that's the only people you see. Stevie Wonder, Quincy, Lionel, and Bob.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I've definitely seen the We Are the World video thing. But I've never watched any outtakes of it.
Yeah.
I do think that something very interesting about the way Bob Dylan did things was I think that it was almost like he gave an outlet to folks that maybe didn't think that they could sing because they were pitchy or something. Yeah. And it kind of gave that, especially in the Americana country, whatever you want to call it, that, or bluegrass or whatever you want to call that scene or that niche of music. Mm-hmm. And it gave an outlet to a lot of people that I think maybe wouldn't have picked up an acoustic guitar just for fun to experiment with art. Campfire people is, I guess, like where I'm from in Illinois is a very small area. Yeah. And a lot of folks that like to play music, and there's always an acoustic guitar around, but maybe people that wouldn't say that they would want to be a professional or they want to perform in front of people, but just performing for the joy of performing. And I think that was part of what Dylan brought to the table.
But Jimi Hendrix is the one that famously said, I didn't ever think about singing, because he didn't. He played for the Isley Brothers, he played for Little Richard, he played for Curtis Knight, and he played lead guitar, but he didn't sing. And he heard Dylan, and then of course he sings kind of like Dylan too, and he writes kind of like Dylan. But he can't really. I mean, Jimi Hendrix is not Marvin Gaye. He's
no. But he's a powerful voice all the same. That's now resonant in our minds.
But not because he's a great
singer. Yeah, that's very true.
But because there's a quality there.
He's almost he almost has an iconography of that voice. Like he's like that. He created and same with Dylan. They created almost like a sub-style of singing.
Sure, but like authenticity.
That's authentic, and they have something to say, and they play with the rhythm and the inflection of the words and stuff. And that's their way.
They mean it.
They mean it too.
Yeah, that's important. The authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. All those things. I have to digest some of this too. And my knowledge of music history is decent, but sometimes I get a little. I mean, it's such now a huge thing. I think about this as we progress forward. There's just more and more and more.
There is, yeah.
And we're still kind of accountable and responsible for the music that came.
I feel like that's definitely true. I mean, people make trad jazz records. I've been on some.
Yeah.
People make that's just one example. But you're competing for somebody's listening time with Louis Armstrong if you're doing that. Like, what makes your version worthy of? It has to be interesting because you're adding. It's once recording started in 1922 or whatever it was. Ever after that, that catalog that you're competing with gets bigger and bigger, and they don't have to buy yours. Yeah. If it's a folk record, they can get the Dylan. If it's going to be a huge ensemble playing Southern rock, they can get the Elvis. They don't have to buy yours.
Well, I think that's a big argument.
Or listen to yours at this point. And
that's a big argument for me because that's something that Steve and I know have been discussing recently. Is like, what are we doing? Kind of a little bit. It really harkens back to like if you're not in it for the love or the joy of doing it, then there's really a that's a huge way to look at it and say, why am I here? Because it's like I am competing against all the greats before me that did this. I do have another part of me that desires to state something in a way that's not been stated before when it comes to my music or what I write. That is definitely a big part of it for me, but also realizing and understanding and internalizing the love that I have for just the creation of art and specifically music.
I get no bigger kick than having some idea in my head and then figuring out every part of it and then actually hearing people play it.
Yeah.
Hearing it on the record after I put it out and go, that was the thing that was just
in my brain, yeah.
And I didn't even have the whole thing clearly. I was waiting for pieces of it to come in, and now people play it, and the drummer says, "Hey, let's play that one, Ted." Now, it exists. I brought it.
It's pretty amazing.
It's real.
So you must gravitate then. Obviously, you have a number of records out and original material. So perhaps, and that's a path for you as I said, a songwriter. That's important for your expression. Right?
Yeah, I started writing songs when I was about 7.
Okay.
And then at some point I got sidetracked with music school and things like that, and I kind of found my way back to it. But
so you did? Oh, did you go to college for music?
I went to UNO here.
Oh, nice.
For saxophone.
Oh, okay. Wow, in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Nice.
Yeah. Ellis Marsalis was my intro piano teacher, and Harold Baptiste was still teaching there. And,
wow.
Red Tyler was around sometime a little bit before he passed, and.
So did you enjoy your time there? Did you find it to be like a worthwhile experience to go to school for music? Because that is now a point of contention, I think, for some people.
I have some serious questions about that still.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, you're 20 years old. You have no responsibilities. You can go on the road and play your music however you want, and you take that time instead to study. And you wonder, and then you pick up all of this information without really having a chance to put it into a song that you're working on, and you kind of walk out of a place like that with a lot of undigested stuff, and it really wore down my confidence. I loved avant-garde jazz when I was a teenager. Like we were saying, I'm from close to Chicago, so. Like one of the Art Ensemble of Chicago players, Roscoe Mitchell, lived in Madison. I'd see free jazz and things like that. I was excited about that kind of music, and the faculty at UNO was not. And I had never had an urge to be a bebop player, but you had to learn that. It was primarily what we learned there. And it became a real side trip. I don't know if anybody really knows how to teach jazz yet, but when I find myself teaching it, it's not the same. I don't teach the scales, I teach the chords.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah, I do too.
I gravitate towards people ask me about that. They come in, they say, "What about this?" I don't know. You use the notes in the chord and connect them with half steps or whole steps, whatever's going to fit. And there's chords around them, but not here. Plug this scale in on this one and this one on that.
That always confused me a bit too, because
it's just
kind of to get a little more technical for people listening.
Well, hopefully we won't go too far in the weeds with that, but I just think there's people that can play that can't teach, and I just think that's I think that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a horn player, learn how to read the chords. I tell my students that.
Sure.
Let's get you to where the guitar player is. We can look at this sheet of chords and know what they all mean, and then we'll see.
About
how you make those into scales or not.
Well, part of it is the pedagogy of the jazz education thing, because you have like the Real Easy book. I don't know if that was something that, in middle school and high school that I'd worked with in jazz combos.
Is that like a Jamie Aebersold thing or something?
Yes, esque thing, and I think we underestimate how much of an influence he had on jazz education. Whereas like when they teach the songs, they give you the head, they give you all the chords, and then underneath is like sample bass lines and scales that here are the chords outlined, and here are this. But they go really in depth of like this scale, and a lot of times it's like Dorian, dominant, and then you have your major scale. So all of a sudden you're kind of like, oh, what you're dealing with, or I'm sorry, Mixolydian, so Dorian, Mixolydian, but it's all the same scale, starting and ending on different notes. I think for younger players, it's like, well, what's the difference?
And it sounds like there's that too.
Exactly.
I mean, and aside from that, what song are you playing? I mean, the songs that I learned to sing in the jazz context, where I wrote out the melody, wrote out the lyrics to it, and learned it as a song, I remember those till the day I die. The ones where I picked them out of the real book from somebody else doing that.
Oh, I don't know.
They were just, what does it mean? I still don't know the lyrics to Green Dolphin Street or what musical it came from or anything. It's just okay, are we doing it in E flat or D or C?
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, and it's so detached from. There's so many things people do in that context that are kind of amusical. It wouldn't, we're gonna all take a solo. I mean, I've gotten, on one solo.
Yeah.
First 2 A's and go back to the bridge is what the audience wants to hear.
Yeah, that's the OG method right there. Is AA and then back in on the bridge.
Yeah, because it becomes repetitive, especially in like those jazz combos. Everyone gets a solo. It's all like the same, like, and then all of a sudden
they trade fours with the drummer.
Exactly, and then they do it every time, so it becomes a formula. Every brunch gig, or whatever the fuck it is.
That's right. You get a degree in brunch gigs.
For real. That's exactly what the fuck it is.
But I think the thing God bless them, the teachers came from jazz. They want to teach jazz.
Yeah, they love
There's a disconnect, which is here's a young kid who wants to learn more about music, get some piano lessons, learn how to sight sing, be a real player. Maybe they don't want to just do that.
Yeah.
Is that the only part of music we're going to teach? And I don't think they wanted to think of it that way. I don't think they did. But the musicians going to the school want to learn music. They're not, a classical degree seems pretty far off. The jazz degree seems closer to what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you have some things that are a little closer to what people want. But yeah, you want to be able to read the variety of chords and be able to read music. You want to be able to thumb something out on the piano.
Yeah.
And you want to get to meet some other musicians. But the other part of it, they pull you into it, and it just gets to be on and on. And it's hard to let go of it once you're like, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to be able to play, what is this thing called love?
It's wild to hear you describe that, because that's exactly what my college experience was in the late 2000s. So it's like 25 years later, that's the exact same thing that I walked into, was like, I just want to learn to be a better musician and like figure some of this stuff out. And it's like, I'm learning, like I'm in the back of a jazzology book writing out every like the bebop dominant scale in every key, and then trying to learn it and regurgitate it. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Right, and then you hear someone like Sonny Rollins play, and it doesn't feel like that. It feels like music.
It feels real. It feels emotional and connective.
Well, what I didn't know, and actually Dan, the episode that came out today, which is Tuesday. What's today? The 7th? Yeah, February
the 7th.
So I mean, this episode that we're doing now will come out on the 14th, but the episode that it is.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Happy Valentine's Day.
Right.
So we were talking about Charlie Parker, and obviously the Omni book and all this stuff. But Charlie was a big chordal outlining type of that chords with then like scales in between. But for me, that I gravitated more towards that in the jazz pantheon, because I was like, oh, I like this idea of outlining chords and finding the interconnectedness of them. But one thing I didn't quite realize when I was younger, and I found out from like a middle school teacher, maybe early high school teacher, was you learn the blues scale when you're learning jazz. And the bebop scale and things like that. And he was telling me, he's like, well, that's not what they called it then. They just played the thing. And they're like, oh, that thing. That's kind of the language they were using. It's only
naming things that already happened.
Yeah, we learned it in post. We made it up afterwards after we studied it.
Analysis comes in post. And I think the thing is that we're doing a lot of analysis in pre now.
No, absolutely. I moved to New York in 2003, 2003, I want to say.
Oh, really? Okay. So how long were you there for?
Or maybe it was 2004. I was there for about 10 years. I was married to a ballerina, and she needed to go up there.
Okay.
So I went with her, and I had finished college here. I'd been in a jam band, and then broke up, and I'm like, well, let me try New York for a while. And then Katrina happened, and it turned into a lot longer up there. But seeing people playing that style at 3 a.m. in the basement of some place like at Smalls or something, which at that time was a BYOB venue. And just go in there with a 6-pack and pass them out, and somebody else would go for the next run, and you'd be down there playing on those songs. It feels a lot different than doing it at brunch.
Yeah.
And people are taking big risks, and
That's exciting.
They're pushing. It's decadent, and you've been on the subway and bash through people with your case to get to where you're going all day, and you get out and you've done your wedding gig or whatever, and now it's middle of the night and you get to be with other musicians and play. That's where bebop happens, when it really makes sense. And you're too tired to be thinking about all those scales. You're going for things, and not worrying about wrong notes. You fix it later.
Pushing the end of the horn, you're pushing the edges of the horn or the axe that you're using. It's like that's all. And that's part of it that I lost a little bit in college. And I'm very thankful for my college degree, and I do have a lot to say about why I decided that a college degree was a must. But at the end of the day, I do feel like there could have been a lot more beneficial way, especially for someone like me who is, like you said, if I would have known that I could have gone to a few different colleges and got a pop music degree or gotten like a modern music degree, which is something that's even more prevalent now. There was only a couple schools in the country that offered that in 2006 or 2007 when I started looking at colleges.
It's a funny thing, because if Louis Armstrong had the ability to go to college for music, he would have done it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But they didn't. They did with what they had. So, this is available to you, and I want to be the best.
Yeah.
This is available.
This is what you want to go for.
Unfortunately, I didn't understand that was a misconception. That doesn't really exist. Being the best being the best jazz trombone player, not only is that completely subjective, it's also it's totally up to what style of trombone player are you the best at? What thing are you doing that's different? How are you pushing the idea of what trombone can sound like and do in different styles of music?
And also, what does that mean? Are you do you have the most accolades and awards? Or
can you play the fastest? How many notes can you play or whatever?
Oh, dude, Alan Watts has the philosopher. He has a kind of a funny thing about if the point of music was to if the point of music was to get to the end the fastest, then the fastest player would be the best.
Would be the best.
And he's like, that's not the point of music. It's to take you to do the journey.
It is funny though. Howlin' Wolf has always been one of my heroes. I really love Howlin' Wolf, but this is somebody he probably dropped out of school completely when he was 12 or something like that. He grew up much rougher than even the other blues players. His mother was religious fanatic, but also maybe crazy or something, and he had to leave her and go find his dad, but he got hooked up with Sun Records, and Sam Phillips got this bidding war going between Rounder and Chess. So he goes up to Chicago. He's signed. He was a successful band leader in the Memphis area. He goes up there, and you know what he does?
What?
He's got a record degree contract. He's got enough money to buy a house. He's got a new car. He enrolls in community college. Takes music theory and English and math and stuff. Wow. And he didn't drink and go backstage, and he'd be sitting there doing his work because he just wanted to go to school like everybody else did.
Wow. I sometimes wonder how much more beneficial school would be for me now, knowing a lot of the things that I know and having a lot more understanding of I was missing an entire layer of building blocks in music understanding.
Well,
and I came in.
You're trying to play the most advanced kind of jazz, and you couldn't write out the chords to Georgia without help.
I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready.
That's most of us, right?
Yeah.
You're 18. You can barely play the instrument. Unless you're some kind of prodigy.
Yeah.
And now you're going to learn Coltrane. But you're going to skip everything about songs, and this is something this isn't the way Coltrane did it.
Yeah.
Again, he's playing with blues bands. He's playing second alto in a big band or something, and then goes and gets a few community college music theory classes along the way as he's going, and learn as you go. But you show up there at 18, you don't really have the questions yet, and you're getting answers to questions you're not asking.
I didn't even know what the question was, and I'm getting answers to it. That's very much. And it was also like learning from, and you're a saxophone player, so I'm sure that would be different from you, but it was like learning giant steps from a tenor sax player is like not very helpful. It's like here's giant steps, and you have to play it for a jazz jury, and you have to play it no slower than 220.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Like, what is that? Like, how do I even functionally make something?
Also, I was also confused. Why is that like the song? Like the songs that became the songs.
Well, giant steps. I can see why giant steps would be, because it's such a it's very etude in the way that it moves around the circle of fifths.
Yes.
So giant steps, I see why, but then it's like I had options. It was like giant steps or I don't know, Windows by Getz or whatever.
Okay.
It's like there's options, and it's like some of them it was just like, oh, this song is very pretty. It's beautiful. I'd love to do this, but then it's like the understanding how to get from I'm learning this tune to I need to play something that passes my jazz jury. I'm air quoting passes. It's like what does that metric look like? And it's like do you play up and down every chord? Do you make sure you play chord tones up and down every single chord of every single bar, every half bar that they
You're trying to prove to somebody else that you can play the song, and that is just a cancer.
Exactly, that's
when
kind
you're trying to play.
I'm trying to feel something.
My fourth semester barrier. And I got into UNO music department. I was skin of my teeth. I'm book smart, at full ride scholarship, based on my ACT score and all that. And that's who I am. But music school, kid coming from Wisconsin, I played in the school band, I played guitar and I played saxophone, and I didn't know how to articulate. There was what is your instrument major? And I just wrote one of them, and I didn't go to the professors and go, I also play guitar and I write and I want to put this together or anything. I didn't know to do that.
Yeah.
How to do that. I don't know if anybody would have listened if I did, but here I probably was better at the guitar than it, honestly.
Oh, really? Wow, okay.
But I wanted to go for sax. I mean, I love George Benson, but there's no Coltrane on guitar if I'm going to study jazz. So, but anyway, fourth semester, I'm still pretty nervous about whether I got in there conditionally and I kind of proved that I was willing to do the work. Not that I was that great of a player. But we got to fourth semester barrier, and my teacher Ed Peterson, had me learn Cherokee in 12 keys. I had these exercises, all these diatonic exercises I had to do, and remember I go through a bunch of those, and then Harold Baptiste goes, I have no doubt that he can play these exercises, Mr. Peterson. And he was like he had this kente cloth, y'all remember, and he had a little goatee, and he's in a whole kente cloth outfit, and he's bald on top, and he's, I don't know how old he was, 75 or something. And then Ed would sit there with his saxophone bounce on his shoulder like this, so I was picture Ed. And the other thing I want him to do is kind of like play Cherokee in 12 keys, so maybe Harold, you pick the keys, and let's go and play on the piano. So there I am. I'll play Cherokee in 12 keys, and so Harold goes, he has to hear the keys. And so Ellis starts to play it, and he gets through 3 or 4 choruses, he's switching keys on me, and finally he goes, this is unfair. And then we played them in order or something, we laughed about it, and I, earned my way to stay in the school. But it's funny is for all of that 12 key thing, if I was teaching somebody else Cherokee at this point, I mean, the way that I hear it, and the way that I could do it, if I want to do it now in 12 keys, I hear this certain kind of 16-bar blues for the A section that's a folk thing. 1 to 1/7 and then 4 to 4 minor, and then you go up to this big 2 like a country song or something, or, and then you have the little bridge thing, which is very understandable. And but at that age, to try to put that suit together and hear the form, I always wonder why people don't talk about forms of songs more, because in my brain they're all organized. And if I'm hanging out with a trad jazz band and they're playing a song I don't know, I'm like, okay, the A section's like Bye Bye Blackbird, and the B section's like
whatever. Yeah.
And I'm putting them together. Okay, but this chord's different. the other one, it was a 4 minor. This one, it's a 2 there, right? And you look over at the other guy. Is that a 3 on the bridge? And they nod, or you look for that one chord and they go, that's a 2.
That's relational. Harmonic analysis in a way, and as well as form. And I'm a music teacher. I've been teaching a long time, private lessons, and I actually am a big advocate of form for kids to understand the relationship between the songs and just the concept of, well, this is how many things there are. And if you can understand it's this many measures, or how the chords can move amongst each other, or just honestly, even really simply in like piano music, like the early books, all right, each line is 4 measures, and you can kind of see there's similarities between, it's like an A, B, A form. You see lines 1 and 2 are almost the same, but there's a little change, whatever. I think that gets them thinking about the relationship between like melody and harmony. Yeah. And how to organize it. And then we start seeing, this song was like this one.
This one was like this one. And you collect the songs, and then you can hear them.
So that's a lot. Tonal centering is what I first heard about probably as a junior in college, where it's basically, it's reduction. It's musical analysis and reduction, basically, where it's like you can say, take like the A section to All of Me and reduce it down to like, it's a C major scale. You can reduce it all the way down to like, the whole A section is C. And it's like, realistically in that A section, you can play C every single beat of every single measure, and I believe that a C would work over all those chords. Then whenever you move to that's not that's the concept, even though it doesn't actually work in the tune I just referenced.
But that's okay. I get what you're saying.
And that was something that helped me with like tonal centering, where it was like, okay, well, over the A section, it's like for this part of the bar, it's like I'm thinking about A melodic minor, and this part of the song, I'm thinking about C minor or whatever. Whatever those pieces helped me start to connect that, and it was based around form. It's all based around form.
Yeah, I'm bad about going out to see music. So my buddy Dan's visiting town, and we went out to see, it was Stanton Moore Trio at Columns. Now they have like a little concert series going on. So it was Stanton and James Singleton and David Torkanowski. Okay. And they're all fucking killer. And I kind of, I haven't seen them in a while, and I was just like blown away by their mastery of just like the understanding of the tunes that they were playing together. And they're, calling out songs that they all know. It's not like, I'm pretty sure there wasn't original material composed amongst them. It's other people's songs. Even Friends, one was like a Steve Mazikowski song, I think. And, I in this context, I don't think that they played anything original that was, a song one of them had written for their group. Okay. But they were creating original arrangements of the songs. That's for sure, if that makes sense.
In real time as well.
Probably, or at the very least, they knew the songs enough to, something. I mean, that mastery of the form of the songs too was something that I was like, wow. And then of course their technical prowess and their communication skills, really embodying their instruments as their voices. Yeah.
I think that's something that's skipped over in the college. Or it's not necessarily skipped over. It's the opportunity to develop it is kind of staunched by I'll never forget having to learn confirmation in 3 keys. It was all I could do to just get confirmation at the tempo. Like just playing the head at the right tempo in 3 different keys. That was like 3 weeks of work on the horn for a trombone player. It's crazy. And it's like just working on that solely. And then it's like I walk into a room where I'm supposed to not only be able to play it in all 3 of those keys, but also functionally solo in all those keys.
Right.
It's like,
you spend all your time learning the head.
The head, it's like I can't even play. It's like for those who don't know, confirmation is a very fast tune with a lot of notes. Yeah. So not very fast, but it's a pretty fast tune with a lot of notes. And on a trombone, it's like it's a physical feat to do that. Yeah. And I'm not saying there's not guys out there that can shred it. I'm not one of those guys, and I'm still not to this day.
Way to be on it.
You had to try to do confirmation to get in UNOS. Confirmation and Satin Doll.
Satin Doll is a lot more manageable.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a weird tune.
Yeah, it's definitely a different
one. I don't like. I don't want to play that song. I never would call that.
That's an interesting thing about it too. Is like these songs that you might not necessarily.
I love Duke Ellington songs, but what?
Satin Doll's not the one. Don't get around much anymore. Love that song.
Yeah,
there you go.
I want to get back. So you graduate from UNO, and then you're a gigging musician right away.
I was with the jam band before I graduated, So maybe when I was a junior in college, I started with the jam band.
What was the name of that band?
That band was called Idle Time. We had a lowercase I.
Oh, okay.
And that was back when we still got the poster. We made little lowercase I's and we stapled them on every telephone pole in town one night. And
that's cool.
We got pretty big. We toured the country for a couple of years. We got open for various configurations of meters and North Mississippi All Stars and Rebirth, and we had a record contract with Louisiana Red Hot Records
Nice.
back then in the late '90s, and I guess our best buddies were Dave Jordan. His band was called Juice then.
Okay.
And so they tour and we tour and we share booking information, things with each other, and open for each other. And there's a couple other bands that are long gone.
So you had like management and booking and all these things?
We did our own stuff on that for the most part, but we traveled all over California, Colorado, all through the Southeast.
And at this time, again, Jazz Fest is $9 at Once Upon a Time. By the way, for those listening, Jazz Fest is like $65 a day now or
I think
something.
it's probably more like 80 or something.
It's crazy.
If you buy them, you can buy them. Actually, so this is the secret for everybody. If you go to the race course, if you're local to New Orleans, you can still go to the racetrack and buy from the box office, and you get to skip out on the ticket fees. So it makes it a little bit cheaper.
Okay.
So I believe if you buy it straight from Ticketmaster, it's $75 plus ticket fees.
Wow.
But if you go to the box office, you can still get them for like $65 even or something.
Can you
like
buy
that.
them day of there?
I don't believe you can. You have to go in advance, and I think they only sell them for like a week period leading up to the event. So
maybe I gotta figure out which days I want to go this year.
Should I just get somebody gets me?
That is definitely the way. I haven't been to Jazz Fest. I work in production, as a lot of people that maybe listen would know. So I'm usually pretty busy, and I haven't gone since 2013. But when I went in 2013, I think I went 4 days. I went, I don't know, it was probably a week before. Drove down there, parked on whatever, Gentilly Boulevard or S18 or whatever that road is that runs by the box office side of the racetrack. Yeah. And you can just walk up to the box office and buy tickets. I'm sure that those prices go up incrementally, just like the regular prices, but you don't have to pay ticket fees.
That's cool.
That's cool.
But anyway, so in this Once Upon a Time, so you're touring, and I mean, was this paying your bills? Were you also then supplementing when you came back to town, doing gigs?
Let's see how it worked. Well, that took up all my time. We were gone every weekend somewhere or other by the time I finished. And I had a little period where I was playing what was then Cafe Brazil. It's called Favela Chic now, things, and we'd call these coffee house, was across from the French Market, and we'd play in there, things like that, with just buddies from school. And then the jazz secretary would book us little things too, we'd play some little gigs like that. So I had a period where I did that, and we didn't make a lot, and some of those gigs were for tips, and sometimes we did make something more. I played with a Latin band from Kenner called Los Sagittarios, and those were, and I think I started that before I was with the jam band, or maybe they were working first, and that would be, do somebody's wedding or somebody's quince or the Nicaraguan Independence Day, or little festivals that we'd do. There's a lot of merengue bands in New Orleans and not enough horn players in the Honduran community to populate them all. So most of us had a merengue gig in the 90s. So that.
That's cool.
And I played with Johnny Angel and the Swingin' Demons. He's still kind of around. I played on Bourbon Street
I think I know Johnny Angel. Black hair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Johnny from the Music Exchange, yeah. I worked there, yeah.
He's
wild.
So I played with him in college for a while, and we played Bourbon Street for a couple months. That was the first time I ever paid my bills was playing on Bourbon Street with him, with a short-lived club, probably a write-off for whatever family owned that.
Yeah.
And then the jam band, at some point, it eclipsed everything. I didn't even go to college graduation. We went and played in Pensacola that weekend, and then that summer we took off for 6 or 8 weeks.
What was the name of jam band again?
Idle Time.
Idle Time. That's awesome.
The leader of Honey Island Swamp Band he and I both want to be a leader, but he was probably was the leader.
Okay.
I had other things going, but then after I graduated, it took all my time, and I was more invested in it. And anyway, we toured around like that, and he eventually, when that all fell apart, he formed the Honey Island Swamp Band, and they're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But we were more jazzy. We were more like in the jam band mode of Medeski, Martin Wood, or Carl Denson or something like
awesome.
that than String Cheese Incident, or we were more on the instrumental side of it than the folk kind of side of jam bands, if you will. So yeah, that you drive each other nuts in the van, and that's the way those things end. And then I took off for New York with the ballerina.
Yeah, that was your wife. You said you were married?
I was married to her for, I think, 13 years after.
Wow.
Together with her about 18.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long run.
Yep.
And how did you like New York? I'm always curious because for me, I don't know, not that I'm not a huge fan, but to me it doesn't vibe with my energy. So I always am curious about people who go there or come back to New Orleans, or how they,
Well, it was, like I said, the jam band, I was done with that.
Mm-hmm.
It had fallen apart. I finished the music degree. I'd been out of school a couple of years. And there wasn't as big a music scene in 2002, 2003. And this is going to seem odd to y'all, but September 11th cramped. Not only did it sank the economy, but it also stopped travel cold for a couple months.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the ticket prices were really high. Mm-hmm. So that affected New Orleans. That year was pretty slow. I knew some people that had businesses that closed and things like that. And Mardi Gras was thin that year. So New Orleans wasn't in a great place. And this is, now we think of Katrina as this big milestone, and it certainly was. Mm-hmm. But things weren't doing as well. The Clinton economy was over with September 11th.
Yeah.
And we were in this funny place. New Orleans was still underpopulated. There wasn't that many horn players out there to learn from. I already had done the degree. What was next? And then I was playing with Blake Amos and doing Spot Cat. We had a great little run there playing Brazilian kind of music that he wrote. And then he moved up to New York. And then I had a friend from home that moved up to New York. And I'm like, if I'm going to do it,
now's the time.
Let's give it a try. I didn't really have a clear stepping stone. In New Orleans, I was playing with Warren Baptiste. That was cool. A couple times a week, and I still was playing with the Latin guys. And then I did my own trio or quartet, jazz quartet at Blue Nile once a week. And I had things going on in New Orleans. It's kind of funny. I played Jazz Fest the last year I was here, maybe with two or three bands. And I moved up to New York, and I'm playing in the subway platforms and stuff. So, I got hooked up with some family of the merengue band from here. It was playing Punta and Calypso music in the Bronx there, and that was cool. And busking and ran into some other people that had been in New Orleans, and then we played kind of Jazz Vipers style jazz. And I got kind of caught up in that, and it never really became some amazing bebop player. I don't know if I had it in me. I got to meet some cool ones. I got to play with Gregory Porter before he got to be huge at the jam session.
Wow.
Got to play with Robert Glasper at a little jam session.
Wow.
J.D. Allen and Stacy Dillard, who's not as famous, who I think everybody up there would agree is an amazing sax player, and got to play with Les Paul just because I knew his piano player, excuse me. Bob Cranshaw, that played with Sonny Rollins, I met him playing little cafes. I'd hang out with him and jam. But I wouldn't make it any money that way. And I didn't see
it's hard to be a musician.
And I didn't see any path that way. And then I hooked up with a big funk band called Milo Z and the Z Funk All Stars, and did these dance steps, which I wasn't very good at. So I did that for a couple of years, and I kind of worked my way into leading little jazz combos, and then kind of found my way back to songwriting and singing somewhere in there.
Oh, good.
And then, like, I would do these online booking things for my jazz trio and do cocktail hours and things like that. But then, at some point, somebody couldn't make my jazz brunch to see me play. And I said, well, I'm playing this original gig at the National Underground. And they came by and saw that, and they said, why don't you try to do a Rolling Stones or something for us, too, at the thing. And I never even thought about doing something like that on the guitar. So I thought, you know what, I'll give it a try. They said, man. So I kind of started to add that element. Then there was, here's the weird thing about New York. You play your original music, you make nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you get a couple drink tickets. You play the jazz trio gig in the restaurant, and they got out of the way for the waiter. There's no stage or anything. You make $75 or something at that time, or $100. And then you play the wedding, and you make all the money you're going to make. And if you're leading your original band, you're paying people at wedding money for. And you can't do the side job. There's no pizza delivery job.
What do you mean?
Because the pizza whole family does it. Crazy Uncle Jerry delivers the pizzas. They don't want you.
Yeah.
You want a job at the corner store? Forget it. That whole little family from Azerbaijan or whatever. I don't mean to stereotype.
Sure, I understand.
But I'm picturing the one in my block.
Yeah.
No, they're doing that. Their kids are there. Whatever.
Right,
Their
yeah.
wife or their brother that just moved from. Now. You can't do that. You can't really do. I used to always do carpentry, or kind of not quite carpentry, handyman work when I lived here. Well, it's a union thing up there.
Yeah.
Except for maybe you're paying a friend of theirs house or something once in a while. Big way on the subway, you don't have a car. So I didn't really have any choice but try to scrape it together playing music. And so I do these conventions and corporate things and weddings and stuff, and it just became more and more where people wanted me to do New Orleans music, and who else is going to do it for them? Mm-hmm. And there was kind of a turning point where somebody said, we have the science convention out in Long Island, and we want, I don't know if they said the word Zydeco or they said Cajun, but it was obvious they didn't quite know what they wanted, and I listened to what she said, and I thought about it, and then she wants some of that, but she'd be okay with some Dr. John or Neville Brothers and things that I already know too. Mm-hmm. Maybe some country songs. And I found somebody I knew up there that played accordion and brought a rubboard, and we do the best we can. And the different guys that had moved up from New Orleans after Katrina, mm-hmm. which was a funny thing. Like people I thought I'd never see again. After Katrina comes, all of a sudden, a bunch of people I went to school with are up in New York and looking for work. And I'd been there 2 years, and so I've got a few things to offer, and okay, I'm gonna put them together, and we'll try to make this happen for you. You want to have a New Orleans jazz funeral, and who else is gonna do it? I'm gonna call all the guys up here I know, like Saturo was up there, and let's try to make it happen for you. So once I realized that was my role in New York, and then I did pretty well with that. But of course, only so long you want to do that. I'm not going to become Kermit Ruffins, I'm just making a living doing it and trying to do it with integrity. And then started writing my own stuff, and everything that I would learn for these I would take and add to my skill set for writing.
So, it was a real hustle. Which is what we've talked about here before with a lot of musicians, the juggle, the hustle.
It still is.
Of course, no, I'm getting to that because I know you're still doing it, but especially with New York, it's almost like that's all you could do. Like you're in it. Where I think in New Orleans, you can side a bit.
It's interesting that you say that the side hustle thing was harder up there, because that's the same thing that I've heard today as well, is that it's much more difficult to have a side hustle that's not music in New York still today.
Even though, being a bartender is something, there's so many more people that would want that. I was never somebody that did that, but I had a friend after Katrina that had been a pretty successful DJ here at House of Blues and stuff, and then he'd bartend. When he gets up there and they've got him bar back and for free and all this stuff, finally he went and became a teaching fellow, and somehow pieced it together, and he still teaches up there. Like there wasn't a path forward. Like being a bartender in New York was not going to work for him at that time.
Or you have to dedicate it to be a career, because they're there's so many people up there that are trying to be craft cocktail creators.
Whatever it is, that's going to be your thing. You're not doing a little of this.
You can't really down here. That's something that I've been very blessed to be able to do, to piece my entire that's the only reason I was able to go to college anyway, was because I was able to work 2 or 3 different jobs the entire time that I was doing it. So it's that's something that New Orleans has really shown me I need to show a lot of love to New Orleans for being so open to allow me to continue to play music and still work in luckily enough now in the scene as well.
Maybe that's a theme. I've heard this too. So that's a thematic difference with the cities, because a lot of people categorize or think of New York as like that's a pinnacle of whatever you're doing. The people you whatever you're doing there, you're the best at art.
If you want to hear somebody play clarinet like Artie Shaw, you can find somebody who can really play it like Artie Shaw.
Yeah.
You want to on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure, and I think that then affect the individuals that you have to dedicate. You're going to be the best bartender, the best mixologist, cocktail crafter, because that's what you do.
You're going to be the best Bruce Springsteen cover band or tribute. It's a tribute band.
Whatever it is, yeah.
You know,
you're the best deli sandwich.
Deli, yeah, for real. No, I mean, hey, there's some serious deli sandwiches.
I know. I'm kind of not joking. I think that's what people...
It's a funny economy there. The food and the deli sandwich is half the price of what it is here, and there's no tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go to get the shirt, and it's in a box. It came straight in from, it's off the boat, and there you go. There's a box of those shirts, and it's like a third of the price of what it would be here. If somebody wants to sell those shirts here, they go to New York and they find that box, they buy the whole box, bring it back and put it in their store.
Yeah.
You live in New York, all of the retail stuff is cheap, and there's no tax on it. You don't pay tax on your clothes, you don't pay tax on your food.
Oh.
You get this little funny break there.
That is funny because
And
they
you
have
pay
tax.
like out the ear if you want to go out to be entertained in any kind of way.
Yeah.
Drink is twice as much and on and on like that. You can't start getting drunk on long necks or something.
Not on my salary.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. That's pretty. So then, at some point, when did you decide to come? What motivated you to come back here?
I think in some ways I figured out pretty quick that it wasn't that great of a fit for me. But Katrina had happened, so I've said this before, it's kind of like you went out to get the paper in your bathrobe and the door slams behind you. Like I hadn't thought about the idea that I couldn't just go back to New Orleans.
Oh, I see.
And then within 2 years of my moving there, Katrina happened, and like, what am I going
now?
back
Where
to?
do I go? Yeah, now
There's a year where there's nothing there, and I did go back and gutted some houses and stuff, and jammed around with old friends and stuff after Katrina. But as far as I'm gonna move back right now, no. And so you couldn't even really think about that until, I don't know if it was 2010, but around maybe 2009 or something.
I was in college during that. I came in fall of 07.
Yeah, my brother moved back down in 07.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, no, I mean it was very.
The streetcar didn't even. I was.
That's right. Yeah, it was like a whole
I
thing.
had gotten myself somewhat established in New York, and my then wife was doing well. Like, we're gonna move back to that when we've.
Yeah.
And then
built
like I said, then these private parties start to come in for me about 2008. All of a sudden, like I'm. Whether it was playing somebody else's band or whether it was booking my own, like I've got a little momentum finally. I can catch my breath, and I'm going to stop that and
go to a place where who knows what's
who knows what's going on, and it's kind of touch and go. And so it wasn't until about 2011 where I started to think, well, I could maybe back, and then it took another 3 years. But I enjoyed checking out the jazz musicians. I did get to see some of those guys up close and play with them and things, but I just didn't want to do that with the rest of my life. I go and hear Mark Turner and like, this is just, forgive me, kind of a small, delicate sound to what he's doing, and it's not Jerry Jumonville. Like, where's the drummers are? It's never just swinging. It's just all this choppy stuff all the time, and we're all just trying to play out, in this kind of funny way all the time. It's it's a basement in the middle of the night. I just couldn't see where does that.
What is that? What path? Where's that
It
taking?
certainly wasn't going to pay any bills for me or anything. And then I got picked up with that funk band. I didn't have time. I couldn't be out till 4 a.m. and then try to take the subway all the way uptown.
The people who do that need to love it, like crazy unconditionally. I think.
I guess I don't. I don't.
I'm not saying. Yeah, it's not. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
It bothered me that I didn't for a long time, but
really?
I never did.
Yeah.
I loved blues. I love
fucking A,
jazz,
man.
like Les McCann,
Yeah.
Eddie Harris.
You like what you like. You can't. Don't be apologetic for it. You are who you are. That's what I think we all have to be.
I just somewhere in there I discovered Bob Dylan, and I always had written, so I got back to that, and I always get. I don't know. I feel like for me, trying to play jazz is always a fight. It's never like just the starting out at UNO in a kind of a defensive posture of knowing that I wasn't as good at this music already as these kids that went to NOCA. Like Irvin Mayfield and I auditioned the same day, and he's like all ready to do it. He already knows these guys, and he's already played. He's gotten a lesson with Winton by now and everything. And here's me, this goofy kid from Wisconsin, plays some saxophone in the school band, and I also play guitar. And like I started out in a defensive position that I'm always trying to play what somebody else likes or something, and then I go to write, and people go. Right away, yeah, you know how to write. I mean,
that's encouraging.
And I do. I know what we're trying to do. I know that I have something to say in that way. I went over to the Frank Brown Songwriter Festival with all the Nashville guys the last couple of years, and I didn't get booked in it, but go over there, and a friend of mine gets me the pass so I can hang out backstage and. And then there's these late night sessions, and you're with these guys, and they've written for George Strait or something. I just know that I fit in, and there's some guy kind of eyeing me up. We're going into the River House to do our circle, and here's one song shakes my hand right away because I understand what we're doing, and I'm part of that. As far as what we're supposed to do in bebop, or I just.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
It took me a long time, and I'm still confused by it. I'm a pretty good sax player. I like the way I play it. I play my own sax on the records. I like the way it sounds, but
I have a similar because I play saxophone. I played it for many years in college. I went to Loyola for music ed and jazz saxophone, so I wasn't a full jazz person, but I do quite a bit. And I'd been in the top jazz bands growing up, and not just at Loyola, but middle school, high school, Allstate. I was playing Barry, and then even afterwards, I'm playing. And I was up until recently quite regularly on saxophone, getting calls for stuff on recordings.
Yeah.
And as much as I love it, I like to put it on my stuff, but it doesn't mean that. Yeah, it didn't always speak to me in that sense. I never thought I would be the bebop person or something like that. Although when you play saxophone, you're kind of not pigeonholed. You're encouraged highly to be a jazz player because that's saxophone.
Whatever you do with the sax.
It's just another tool, though. That's how I think about it.
I've played up in Natchez, and as soon as you take out the sax, they're like, somebody says, well, now you're playing jazz. In a kind of pejorative sense, like, just because there's a saxophone now, it's somehow jazz.
Yeah.
Like if I put out a record of Metallica covers with
a saxophone,
it would be jazz, a jazz version of the song.
Yeah, exactly.
And not in a good sense of the word.
Yeah.
And
the timbre, and it's just what people categorize.
And I've written some instrumental songs, and we had the jam band. I wrote some. I was kind of dedicated to making instrumental music at one period, but what are they? I mean. They I don't know. Something like 4 or something that Miles Davis wrote or a Wayne Shorter thing is that equal to Tangled Up in Blue or is it equal to Nadine by Chuck Berry? Is it no, they're playing music and these are these vehicles or something. Like if you're Hoagie Carmichael, maybe, but you're kind of a singer-songwriter, aren't you?
Sure.
In your own way, you're not just.
And a lot of people, thankfully, are pushing the envelope. What's that? Zoos?
Too Many Zoos?
Yeah. That's saxophone. Do you know Too Many Zoos?
Mm-mm.
They're like subway performers, but Dan knows the guys.
Yeah, so they've actually
New York, and they do that kind of
the crazy. It's like EDM. It's like acoustic EDM. Yeah.
Yeah, I've hung out and talked to them.
Yeah, they're around. They toured down here. They played a couple shows in New Orleans.
We you asked about my different jobs, and there ain't been many, but I worked at the place called Brooklyn Woodwinds for a while, and they came in and got their horns fixed up and stuff in there when they were first getting that together. So.
But that's just an example of people pushing the envelope. I think that a lot of younger musicians kind of recognize that, like, so you want to box us in? Like, fuck that. I like this. I like rap or hip hop or EDM, or I like classical, or I like whatever it is, and I just like my instrument. So they're trying to carve paths.
We did that with our jam bands in a way. Like, this is our instrumental music, but it's not jazz.
Yeah.
And there was a confusing period there where I got out of that, and then I wrote some songs that were jazz, but still they don't quite, like, getting it reviewed by a jazz magazine. Not quite. Like, you can't be Hoagie Carmichael right now.
Yeah.
There's no place for that in the industry. There's, like, you can write something, I guess maybe people think what I write now is still kind of jazzy, but as far as marketing it, no, they don't want me. You know,
singer-song. It's all to me. It's singer-songwriter now is a lot of what.
But your band Ted Hefko and the Thousandaires. It's more like rock, blues, folky groove, like, and then there's like there is New Orleans influences.
Absolutely,
of course. Yeah. So, it's certainly not jazz.
Right.
Well, I think that's the big thing that everybody's saying, though. What is jazz? Like, what is jazz really? Like,
and that's the thing you were asking why I came back to New Orleans. In New Orleans, that people get that thing most of the time. Another place, who knows?
I feel like that is something that's been really nice for me personally, and for our band specifically, is the openness and acceptance of non-genre specific music, because that's something that we've had to deal with the Crooked Vine specifically, is like, how do we label this? Like, everyone wants you to label it. And that's part of the issue, I think, a little bit. And, like, a lot of people that aren't musicians and consume music want to see that label to know, do I like this thing or do I not? And I think that's something that the New Orleans has been really good, and the trombone specifically for me has been able to help me stay out of that trope of, like, whenever you take a trombone out of the case, it's not always automatically jazz. And I've been kind of lucky to have that.
Fred Wesley is maybe the ambassador of trombone.
Yeah, definitely.
More than Kai Winding or something.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. It's like you broke that barrier. You kind of broke that barrier a little bit. Where you get into that funk and that rock thing.
Well, one thing you guys, and I don't know your band very well, I'll be honest.
Okay.
But you guys, when it's your band, it's 5-6 pieces, it's on a big stage. And I've kind of gotten a trap, and it's probably because I don't have any kind of day job, where sometimes it's the full thing, sometimes it's me solo, sometimes it's a duo. When does it Ted Hefko and the Thousandaires? When am I just working a gig? And it's not really that. And it makes it hard to promote, and that's the kind of trap I'm in right now. Is I don't have another source of income. I'm handy. You know, I'm fixing up my new place I moved in, and I'm going to get some kind of credit for that, and rent, and like I can do that.
Good.
But that's about as far as I go. I don't have any. What am I going to do? Minimum wage? Stocking the shelves at Whole Foods or something like
Popeyes. They're hiring at the corner. No,
sure. I might be headed there.
Hey, free chicken, man.
But you know, I did a little stint on Bourbon Street coming out of COVID when we were talking about that, and I'm like, I kind of into it for a while. Like, let me try to learn some more covers. Like, I spent my 90s in a practice room doing All the Things You Are. Why not learn Tom Petty? I always liked him, you know. And so I've been into that to some extent, but as far as I can extend myself that way, it's still probably not far enough.
Also a rough gig. I mean, just the parking alone, just the hassle of getting to the actual gig on Bourbon Street.
The longevity of the show itself, the amount of stuff you have to know. Like, there are some pretty big caveats, and I know that there are a lot of guys, like 2 guys specifically that I know, that drive in out of Mississippi. They work day jobs in Mississippi. And then they drive in 4 nights a week to play bourbon. And I personally do not know how they have enough inside them to do that. Yeah, but it really must be a love for recreating and doing those covers, because it's a top 40 through the ages band. That they're playing the top 40s from 1960 all the way to today. and they're both keyboard players. I think one of them plays key bass and one of them plays keys. But it was like years they were doing this. I don't know. I'm not sure how that transpired with COVID happening. I haven't talked to them since any of that. But that's what they were doing for 2 or 3 years. They were working a day job every day, 5 days a week, and then they would drive over here after they got off work for it's almost a two-hour drive to play a 4-hour set and then drive back and go to work next morning.
I've talked to some Cajun musicians that basically doing that too. They're working at the chemical plant or something, and then they come in and play Cajun Zydeco stuff all weekend, and
it's funny you say that. I think one of those guys is a chemical engineer. That's like what he does for his day job.
Right, but I don't know. You brought up the COVID thing, and that's been funny. Like going into COVID, I played clarinet every Tuesday night at Favela Chic with some kind of pickup trad band, and just as far as I ever get with it, really. I never dedicate myself enough to trad to be, first call at Fritzl's or something, but I know all the damn songs. And then I would do Thursdays. I was at.
God bless you for clarinet. It's a hard fucking instrument.
I love it, but but I don't know if they'd love it enough to only do that.
Yeah.
Then I was doing Thursdays at 21st Amendment, and then I was playing with another singer-songwriter on sax, and then I had mine. I had a little different balance. During COVID, I did a lot of things just solo on the guitar, whether it was touring, whether it was the live streams, whether it was somebody's little porch thing, or stripped down, duo, trio, and I don't have a lot of stuff where I'm just working sideband anymore at this point, and maybe that balance will come back. I think we're still getting out of COVID in a way.
Yeah, but if you're making the money and you're happy with what you do, like you're content with your life and the peace and everything inside of you,
I'm not. I'll be honest with you. I feel like I've kind of things I was part of before have dissipated, and I'm kind of searching for where I fit into the whole thing again. And I mean, I guess you never get out of that. You play music. It works for a while, and you're not the new thing every year.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't be the latest thing forever.
No, but you like writing music, right? Of course. So if that was a focus that made you happy, would that be the path that whatever makes that work?
But you got to make a living too.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the hard part.
I enjoyed the period. I'm still kind of off and on bourbon because I wanted to learn the Tom Petty and the Bruce Springsteen. I wanted and get paid to do it. Sure. And I've been taking some vocal lessons to try to improve my range, and taking some guitar lessons too. And the sax has kind of taken a back seat for a while on that. But I don't know if I want that to continue forever.
Sure.
But
we only have so many days.
If I'm able to pay my bills and I can work on what I want, then I feel successful. And
that's the dream. I mean, a lot of envy. People would be envious. Envious.
I've said this before, and not to y'all necessarily, but just a thought. There's no prize for you only made your living playing music.
Yeah.
There's no prize for that.
Sure.
You play your original, you do your full band, and then you do your day job. It works just as well.
Oh, I know people. We've talked on this podcast. I have my buddy. He and I make music. His name's Dave. He actually masters the episodes. He's a pharmaceutical rep up north where I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and we make music on the side. We have a new song coming out soon called "Birds Aren't Real." It's a lot of fun. We make silly, fun music, and it's really fulfilling in that way. We get something out, and he does another thing with his roommate, who's the drummer for our thing. Anyway, so we've talked about he is totally taken care of financially. He has a life that he's really happy with, and he has a whole full studio that he's put together because he has the money to create a studio, and he now is trying to branch out.
What you want. You don't have to take the smaller thing.
Yeah, he doesn't do gigs at all. He
talking
just
to your buddy,
music.
Our mutual friend Jonathan Solomon, a little bit
the bass player
Kumasi is not. There's no version of Kumasi that could do Bourbon Street. There's no version of Kumasi that's a 2-piece. You're either going to book
it's
that
the whole fucking thing or not.
all or nothing. The festival or nothing.
Yeah.
And there's something nice about that. And I don't know if I could put the cat back in the bag where you either get 6-piece Ted Hefko and 1,000 Dares or nothing.
It's up to you though. You could, or you could create new brands. You could I mean,
I have this new thing with Tiffany Pollack we call Jackknife Juke.
I saw that. Yeah, wow. She's super cool. I like her a lot.
And we just do country stuff together.
I saw that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know. I've met Tiffany a few times. That's fantastic.
She's super cool. I think the branding, when you said earlier on how to do it, I think
it's part of life. You can't bitch about it and say, "I wish we didn't have to label it." You're trying. If you're trying to sell it, then you got to tell people.
You got to do
what
something.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Does it contain tree nuts or not?
Yeah, exactly. For sure. It's a good way to put it.
But we're in a similar spot with the Crooked Vines now, and Lindsay's our new singer, but now she's been in it for a bit, and we have the new material that came out, the new EP, and we have new songs that we're working on, but we play a lot on Frenchman. 3090 is our place, and we do get to play a lot of original material, but we're also playing covers because it's a long set. And
what kind of covers do y'all add in?
Ones that we like. I mean, we do a couple Michael Jackson, we do some Jamiroquai, and we do... I don't know.
Jamiroquai, this is the question,
uh-huh.
and I'm interviewing you, let's switching roles, I don't know. But this is getting at what I'm trying to figure out, so if I might.
Sure.
Does the Jamiroquai fit the bill as a cover, or how much percentage of the people that come in recognize the Jamiroquai song as a cover, and if it just becomes an original, if I pick a...
Sure, I understand.
And I learned a couple songs off of Bruce Springsteen, Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that most people come in and think, oh, he's doing Springsteen. No, you got to do Fire or Glory Days or something to do that. It doesn't count to do the B-list one.
Sure.
And if you dig, like somebody one time came in and asked me about doing the Black Keys, that would be great. But would that song...
If it's Gold on the Ceiling, otherwise,
What's that?
Gold on the Ceiling is a Black Keys song that I think a lot of people know.
But people would come in and go, oh, you're doing Black Keys.
But they might not know that's what it is.
That. So that's
They just go, oh, I remember this at Jamiroquai, we do Virtual Insanity, and people are just like, I know that song.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that because we have seemed to find a really awesome niche where we've selected like a really solid list of covers that are like unique songs that maybe like spark a memory with someone, or like, oh wait, I remember this song. Well, wait, it's that one song. And we've actually gotten to a place where I think that we've realized that there is something unique about playing something that the audience as a collective realizes that some of the people in the audience know. Like we've gotten to a point where it's like you get that, like when we start Jamiroquai, and like there's a really, just like that, it's a very, very recognizable piano lick if you know it. If you know that lick, and pretty much every time we play it, someone's like, oh shit, in the audience, which cues everyone else into the audience to know, oh shit, they're playing something that everyone else, oh wow, this is that song.
Like American Boy by Estelle, we do that song.
I don't know these
references.
I might if I heard it.
Yeah, if you heard it. If you heard it.
If you heard it, you'd be like, oh, it's that one song that's popular.
It was the year I was sitting in the practice room.
So this is, but that, I mean, that's kind of, the thing is like we kind of choose things that we like to play. And that's an important element.
We've been very lucky and we have, and I will say as an asterisk to that statement, that we have also had some songs we thought were going to be awesome covers that have just totally flopped.
Yeah.
So we totally had that happen.
But then we also just, if we like them, we keep them.
Yeah. And I mean, that's more of the, the B.B. King, Elvis, Ray Charles kind of people that not really good songwriters, but they know how to pick. When B.B. King's doing Hummingbird, people don't think he's doing a cover.
For sure.
I mean, he's all covers. B.B. King is...
Yeah. Same with Elvis. I mean, Elvis, they're not covers, but he didn't write them himself. Except like...
If you dig that deep, well, he also had people that wrote specifically for him as he got along.
It's not a cover.
But if you're digging through obscure things, or you're digging into some back catalog, that's a creative endeavor, and you're bringing something to the forefront, which sounds like what you guys are doing, which what I try to do too.
I think it's us trying to stand in both boxes at the same time as a little bit. It's like we know we have to do this thing, but how do we do it in a way that helps us with the audience side?
And then gives them a place to put your originals.
Yeah.
Which is what I try to do too, and then of course if I'm on Bourbon, for example, you still got to do Brown Eyed Girl.
Yeah.
You're not getting around that. You still got to do Wagon Wheel once in a while.
Don't Stop Believing is going to be.
You still got to do. Well, not for me. I'm not. Is that Steve Perry?
Oh, that's Journey.
Journey. Right. that's out of my reach.
You skipped over that one.
I'm not gonna compete with those guys as a singer. So but I could do Tennessee Whiskey, but maybe I pick out a.
That's cool.
I do think Chris Stapleton's a great singer.
Oh, I love Chris Stapleton. Yeah.
And he's also got to be big, so I'm always a fan of those people.
Yeah.
Like you're big, but you're also legit.
Pretty cool. Zach Brown.
It's
Zach Brown
like,
band's pretty cool.
Zach Brown's another one, and Tyler Childers is another really great guy who came out.
Yeah. So I learned a couple of his and a couple of Sturgill Simpson.
Yeah, Sturgill. Yeah, they're great.
But then do they count as covers if you get? They do. If someone asks for Sturgill Simpson and they're happy that you played something of his, it doesn't have to be the other song.
It's just a very unique way that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. I think in the music scene,
if you get it right,
because it's also like on Bourbon Street. I think something to mention though too is that you're kind of trying to sate it's almost like how many boxes can you check whenever you're on Bourbon Street. It's like if I'm going to play some original music, say, on Bourbon Street, and very few artists do that on Bourbon Street. I'm not sure how much original music you cycle in or not, but it's almost like well, if I play 10 recognizable covers, then maybe I can play 3 originals / obscure covers that fulfill me. It's almost like you're making that, you're really making like a handshake trade-off really with yourself.
I was talking with the manager at the place I've been playing most recently, and she's saying you got to be able to you have to have enough songs to pivot. Like if this genre is working, you got to be able to do that for the rest of the set.
Keep going. Just keep going.
Maybe the thing you had works like, okay, I got enough outlaw country to do a set. I got enough rock and roll, 50s rock and roll to do a set. Yeah. I've got enough 60s stuff. I can do a Grateful Dead, and I can do a Dylan, and I can do a Allman Brothers, and I can do a set like that. And then, but if they wanted Motown, I didn't feel like I'm up to it vocally, maybe, but I'd have to work on that if I want to stay on that street.
Sure.
For sure.
And then, you sneak in your Motown-ish, originally yours.
Yeah, the thing that kind of fits the vein, right?
Yeah, this fits the theme, I mean, I liked all this, here's...
Well, because all of a sudden your original's a cover too then, right? Like, it's like, just as much as a song, a cover that's obscure might as well be original, just the same as the opposite, where it's like your original might as well be an obscure cover. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's just a song that nobody knows.
But then you also have people come in that want to hear that, and they hear one original, so just do yours for us, and they put 20 in.
Yeah.
So we've had that experience too on Frenchman, where it's like, it's hard to know sometimes which crowd you're playing to until like you're in the moment, and it's like too late to take it back a little bit.
Yeah.
But because
sometimes you go out too far.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also part of it, and you're juggling that, and we desire to be original people, so we have to push that a bit.
Yeah.
I will say another thing that's done for us though is very much given us a pulse on like what we're doing originally and what we're doing like obscure cover wise that works and doesn't work.
Yeah.
There is a very great gauge in New Orleans specifically that I don't know necessarily exists anywhere else that I've seen or been to, that where you can really have that opportunity to stretch it far enough where maybe you do lose some people in the room, or maybe the club owner, especially on Bourbon, is like, yo, what are you playing? Bring it back in. Yeah. But it's like you still can get that gauge where all of a sudden it's like we played this song, like one of our newer ones, no, that's not the What's Wrong With Me?
Oh, yeah.
Like we one of the songs we just released, I mean, we played that live for what, 6 months, 6 months or so before there was a consumable version of that anywhere publicly. And I feel like although I've come to really like that song, and I liked it whenever we originally started it, I wasn't sure what audience it was for. But it seems to have been for any audience. Like, anytime we play that song, it goes really, really well. And it's like we've kind of found...
This is an original?
Yeah, it's an original song,
just came out there.
Yeah.
And Other Side does well, too. That's another,
and that's kind of... I conceived that song, and maybe I contrived what the utilizability of that song was... And it was wrong. I was just wrong. Like, people eat that song up. They love it. Every time we play it, it's very uplifting and kind of ends with this "there's nothing wrong with me" kind of idea. Is what is like the and it reinvigorates your spirit for creation. Where it's like, oh wow, like I had an idea about what this song was going to do for us, or what result it would have for an audience, especially an audience.
Where is that in the process? Let me ask you all this, and I don't know. Why am I taking over?
Go, please. Go ahead.
By all means.
Are you writing the lyrics first? Are you writing the music first? Are you thinking about what song you need, or you hear it?
So for What's Wrong With Me, that's me. I wrote the music and the lyrics.
Which happened first? Or?
For that one, it's been different on different songs. That one was a little more simultaneous. Well, actually, that's not quite fair. The music did kind of come first. I think the original chord progression, that with the A section, so to speak, and then the lyrics started coming out. And when I just sat down and put the work in. So for me, lyrics don't come. Music will come naturally. I can just sit down at a piano and make things up. Music is not easy, but that just flows. Words are a little harder, and I have to sit and speak with the muse and like focus. I have to be like, okay, I'm setting aside an hour and I'm sitting down and thinking about what I want. And normally I'll get some stuff and then I'll refine it, but I have to do the work for the words. Yeah. They did come in different pieces, but as the words started to flow, it shaped the parts of the music. So like there's a section where we go to 12/8, and that would have never happened had I not been focusing on having a part that's more like spoken, almost like rap, in the middle of the song. So it did.
And you have a different singer that's going to perform these. It's not you singing them.
Correct.
That is definitely something.
Do y'all sing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have my own stuff that I sing on. Yeah.
Okay.
So under my name and he.
In the Crooked Vines, or you're writing this and you're thinking.
I write.
Is it Lizzie or Lindsay?
Lindsay.
Lindsay's going to sing something you wrote.
Yes,
correct. I'm rarely in that position.
Yeah, that's a very different thing, and that's something that I had
for somebody else. Yes.
My process is actually the exact opposite of Steve's, which is why I think we've always worked really well together at writing original music. Is that I'm very melody and lyric driven. Mm-hmm. It's all the first thing that comes to me in anything is like I usually tend to feel like I hear all the parts that I'd like to be there, kind of like you said before, where it's like I'm hearing this thing like. Parts of it are there and pieces of it are missing kind of still. Yeah. And like the human interaction is what really usually fills those pieces on my end. But I'm hearing a melody or a lyric first, like a turn of phrase. And that's what starts it. So the other song that we released on the EP we just released, which is Other Side, that's a lyric driven song that I started writing. Mm-hmm. And I wrote the choruses, and then I wrote one verse. And then the other verse was a bit of a collaborative effort, but mostly it was me, tweaking and figuring that out. And I think that whenever I've been writing songs since I was like 14 when I first started like in a rock band in high school. And I say writing songs, really more of writing lyrics for that long. Yeah. And I feel like that figuring out how to unlock writing for a different voice or a different person, that's something that was really freeing for me. It's almost like a writing exercise, where it's like an empathy exercise, even almost, if you will, where it's like I'm trying to put myself in a, even if it's a self-created place or space for that person to be in. It's like, what would I feel in this situation or this scenario, or whatever it is we're trying to write about, or whatever maybe hook or thing that already exists. It's like, okay, well, something in this vein.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's another song. It didn't come out yet, but it'll be on an upcoming one. It's called Final Bow. We perform it live. So that was one. It starts with a big bombastic, hey you. And I knew at the time, actually, we were maybe going to have Faith Becknell perform with us. I was playing with her, and she was maybe going to start singing with Crooked Vines. It didn't quite pan out, which is...
Who's that?
Faith Becknell. She's a cover band person that I played for some time with.
Okay,
I was doing cover band stuff for a long time with a bunch of different bands. But... So I knew it was not me who would ever sing this thought. Like I was like, what I'm writing is not for me. I know it's for somebody else to sing because it's big and bombastic and most likely a female vocalist. Okay. And then when Lindsay joined the band, I was like, you're going to be perfect. And then I wrote the rest of the song for her. I knew the idea that I wanted with lyrics, kind of.
Does she chip in on it?
Yeah. She'll help. She might be like,
I want to tell you I don't want to play that. I don't want to sing that.
That has happened with something, yeah.
We've definitely had that happen with our old lead singer as well, where it's like we have an idea and it's like this idea just isn't for this project or this thing.
Yeah, I think that everything can be tweaked. So in theory, I think it can be performed. I'm very much like, no, let's just figure out what works for you. So lately I've been doing it a bit more like, these are the words, this is my like half-ass melody I'm going to sing to you with like some like a rhythmic context, and you change it to make it make sense for you. Yeah. So I've been doing that a little bit lately. So
and we've done that with words too, where it's like all of a sudden it's like, well, the way I want to perform this, and that's something that I excel at, and I'm actually, I'd say my strongest part of songwriting is like taking a part of something that someone else has done and then like trying to work the rest of it out with them. I would say is probably where I would say is one of my strongest songwriting suits. But
you say being the co-write?
Yeah, being kind of like a co-writer, or even it's like, wait, I'm trying to figure out, like, how can I make this one phrase fit better? It's like, oh, I want to do this other melody, but it doesn't work with the words that are written right here. Like, what can we change it to? How can we tweak this? What can we make different? Almost in like a producing way, if you will, but it's like the collaborative effort on making something work to be fit more for someone's voice, I think, is something that really gets me off, I guess, for lack of a better phrase.
Cool.
That's cool. Because you're problem solving.
Well, what is your process, actually, now that we've got into it?
I guess I have something I want to happen lyrically, and I kind of had an epiphany when I wrote when I was a kid, and then as we talked about, I went through a period where I'm writing instrumental music.
Mm-hmm.
There's some for the jam band, and the jam band broke up, and I wrote some for a jazz quartet, and I released those. But one of the things I did when I moved to New York was work as an extra in movies.
That's cool.
And then, I didn't have any acting training, but somehow the people that book you for the extra things would try to get you to go to auditions too. And maybe they had to maybe they had promised to send so many people to these auditions or something. And I was usually like a fish out of water. Like, I'm not going to have any training in that art. But at some point in there, I think my dad had sent me an Amazon gift certificate. I'd ordered this book of 3-minute monologues, or I bought it at Barnes & Noble. But at about the same time, I got in these 2 early Dylan records when he's just solo. And the 3-minute monologue book was cool. And they were sometimes taken from literature or plays, and I really was thinking about, what is a 3-minute monologue? How much happens in that and so forth? How big of a thought is that can transpire in this? And then I pull out the Dylan records and like,
that's a
3-minute. That's a 3-minute monologue.
Yeah.
And then something clicked for me in that I started to understand the economy that I desire in writing. Like, how much happens. And there's songs that we love that nothing happens. Like Stevie Wonder's superstitious at the beginning of the song, he's superstitious at the end. Why you're superstitious? Who prompted you to say this? We don't know.
Yeah, it's just catchy.
I call that a vignette. I wish, or he's looking back at his childhood. Okay, big deal. Why are you doing that? We don't find that out. I think.
Oh, I see.
I love Stevie Wonder as a producer of the singing. I love the performance.
Yeah.
That I'd be unsatisfied if I wrote that in some way.
I understand where you're coming, because there's no story arc.
And
to that.
Penny Lane. Okay, there's different people on Penny Lane for the Beatles.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, it's like why?
And that's like world building.
One of my favorite songs is Chuck Berry, Memphis, and you're developing the singing at the end of the thing. You understand, he reveals in the last verse that he's talking about a custody dispute with his 6-year-old daughter, not his lover. And all of the lyrics from the whole thing, that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So there's an amount of like, it just makes one little twist, and that's what those 3-minute monologues had, or the really good Dylan songs had. Like, I'm sure Stevie Wonder has songs that do that. I don't know his whole catalog, but it just to say, I want it to move like that. I want something to happen in the song. I want to discover something, and I'm not writing a jingle.
Sure. Warren Zevon would do stuff like that.
I'm not writing an essay on a cause that I believe in. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just don't do it. I'm going to learn what the song's about and discover something in the process of writing it.
Sure. And
then maybe the listener does too as they listen through it. And so that's what I go for. And I want it to be economical. I admire Chuck Berry probably more than anybody, because they're so tight. There's no extra stuff. There's no babies and all that stuff. As I got on a city bus and headed down the street, I thought I saw my future bar. As I got on a city bus and found a vacant seat, I I thought I saw my future bride walking down the street. I shouted to the driver, "Hey conductor, you must slow down, pull over, please let me off this bus." Nadine, there's no daylight in there. No. There's no bullshit. There's no babies. There's no oh yes. It's like
I see what yes. Yeah, I've been I grew up loving Led Zeppelin, but lately as I got older, I'm just like, there's a lot of babies, a lot of oohs and ahs, and that for me that got a little
thin songwriting.
I love Van Morrison. And he has some great writing. I like to sing, and it stoned me. The second verse, the sun came out. On the way back home, we sang a song, and somehow when we were getting dry, almost glad a pickup truck nearly passed us by. Okay, then the third verse, again, they're dry. And then I get confused about which verse. And I just don't think Chuck would have been okay with that. I think he would have got out the thesaurus and fixed it.
Yeah, we need to figure out
dry in both of those. Like, there's got to be something more. So that kind of thing, I try to demand to myself, like fix it and don't have the same adjective in two verses.
That is very much something that I'm about. Is like unless it's like a repetitive chant, like a chorus thing. The repeated words are that's lazy songwriting almost.
It is, There's more. There's a wide.
There's something else there, like you said. There's something else to draw out of that story or that piece.
Yeah, there's got to be something. It's asking something more of you. So that's what I would say is something about those 3-minute monologues that click for me. And there's so many sentences. There's so many songs, like Hoagie Carmichael, like 4 sentences, 6 sentences, and you get it done.
Word economy.
And I mean, and you can be economical. I mean, Tangle Up in Blue is 7 verses, and it's still tight for Dylan. It's like, wow. Most of us can't do that, but he can, and there it is. He doesn't have a repeating thing.
It's like poetry.
Everyone's another.
Poetry in motion,
Poetry in motion and prose almost too, which are different, but there's an element there that
And I heard this thing of, okay, you have the music, and you have the rhythm and all of that, but if the words have a kind of a logic that propels them forward. And that's what I admire when I listen to the Nashville guys, and they're sitting around passing guitar, and the songs that they, and I say we because I'm there, not with them, not because I ever wrote anything for Ray Stevens, but you build on the thought, and this phrase leads you to that one, and then at some point, kind of like a Larry David writing, you circle back, right? And the lady that stole a candy bar in the first moment is now there again or something, and then the song is done.
Yeah.
And you've learned what you were going to learn. But I hope that, what I write, I learned from it, and it's not just me trying to say, well, here's my thought on capital punishment.
Yeah. Sure.
Here it is. That people do that very well. I did it in high school. I'd try to have a punk rock band, and every song had a cause and stuff.
Protest music. Or
but it's not whether it's protest or not so much as did I have a predetermined outcome, or was I in it to learn something.
That's interesting that you say that, because I do have one more question specifically about your writing process, I guess, which is like, what is the conception point? Like, whenever is there something that you can put as a consistent moment where it's like, I'm inspired by this idea, this melody, or this chord progression, or this thing? Like, what is the impetus to the start of a song for you?
I feel like some of them, like they say women only have so many eggs and then they're all gone.
Okay.
There's a finite number when they're hitting 14 or something.
Sure,
I feel like so many of the ideas, even though I've put out 5 records, and then I had some instrumentals before that, they're all kind of there from a long time ago, and they're just waiting, and now I have time for this one. And there was a couple on the last record, I call it like Wrestling a Bear, like I had Down Below, which was the title track. And I just got some encouragement from a couple of my peers, from Lynn Drury and Jamie St. Pierre, on that one. And then I just pushed it. But I really had all the pieces. I just needed to wrestle it down and say, you go in this verse and you're not in the song. And no, I'm keeping that thing that is a bar longer for that verse. And and just pushing through. So I had two like that where I really wrestled them down. It started on way back when I lived in Harlem, that one, and Please Don't Refuse. And I didn't really change them that much. I just finally decided, no, you're going on an album and wrestle. And then I always get a couple freebies that just come together all at once. And for the last record that was Hurtin' 2, it was just like, bam.
Yeah, is that amazing?
And then I have things like I had a little blues on that record called Hang On To Your Hat, and just every 3 months I'd have another verse, and I go, I like that one, and just the way that it sets, and try to put them in an order. So those are 3 very different ways of writing.
But that's so normal too, I think, for everyone. We have a song that's been in many different. We're working on it right now. I have 3 different versions of lyrics for it for the entire song. Over time, we performed it with Michaela. Now something doesn't matter. It'll get there one day. You know, and then another one came.
Some
like
of them
that.
just feel they get kind of manhandled at some point by all of that, and it is good to try to pick them when they're right.
Yeah.
And you can't pick them too early, or then they just go, oh, I don't know what you want me to do with me. The song just is like it wasn't ready, and you tried to pull it out, and now you're confused because you didn't let it form enough. Mm-hmm. And then there's the one where you just won't accept it for what it is. Yeah. And you want to keep making it be more, and it's not going to be more.
It's not going to be more. No, that's an important perspective to have for anyone listening as a songwriter, as what I've learned. Yeah, sometimes you can't make it more than what it is. It's just what it is.
Cut out, I think you let it grow for a while, and you prune it back.
Yeah.
Cut out, throw away a verse.
Kill your darlings, right?
Take a little bit out, and then all of a sudden it fits into place, and it has the geometry or something. Again, like this logic to the way the words fit together. Mm-hmm. I just feel like that has to be part of it for me. They gotta sit. They gotta all sit together in this little chain.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel the same way. It's like and a lot of it so like a few of the songs specifically, I remember I remember the inception point where it's like I wrote the entire chorus and then I wrote the entire first verse in like 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's like that inception point, and I guess listening to you talk about it, your process, and it helped me relate it to my process a little bit. And I guess it presented another question for me, is like, how do you fight block? Like whenever you don't have something and you need to work on something, or you're not feeling inspired.
I learned another instrument.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Or another 20 covers, I don't know. And
I see. So you work through it.
No, that's great. That's a great way to...
The first track on Down Below, my latest record, which is a couple of years old now, but I had to kind of learn how to do something on the guitar because I wanted to have this juxtaposition, this kind of droning Native American feel to the guitar, almost like bong ding, bong ding, bong ding, and then have a funk beat underneath it. And I just sat with the metronome for a long time, and I started with just this octave thing, and then I kind of found just gradually, just by sitting there with it, till I expanded my little bag. A new device is like what they used to call it in jazz. Until I built out a bunch of options for myself in there for that part of the song. And then the lyrics, I really wrote them pretty quick, and then I had to kind of just, like I said, later on accept them and say, that's all you got. You got these 4 verses, and that's that. And sometimes you want to change something in the fourth verse, maybe just take the thing from the first one and let it settle into something. I don't know. Each one's a battle. I think about it. I'm not trying to come up with a songwriting machine that makes songs by the same method. Each one is its own deal.
And because you never know also what the right. You shouldn't do that. You should not cookie cutter, because.
Well, some people are great at that, and then they make a bunch of money at it.
Yeah, but then also you never know what could hit. That's what I was getting at. Is like, well, maybe the one that you thought was the weird one is like the best one.
I mean, that one got a lot of airplay, and I didn't want to put it first, and the bass player, Justin, convinced me that needs to go first on the record. I wasn't happy with it at first. I got somebody else to come and play drums, because I really wanted that thing to happen rhythmically. And that's where I can be picky other than the lyrics. I never was a great drummer, but I have something in my mind rhythmically that I want to happen for each song.
Okay.
And for that one, I had to kind of fight for it on a production level. And just go, no, and I got Isaac Easy that's playing with Tedeschi Trucks now.
That's cool. Yeah, Isaac's fantastic.
I knew Isaac was going to get my thing, and so I had it on a click, and I said, let's get Isaac in here and let's get what I want on this to happen. And that became the one they played on OZ and everything for that record.
See? That's pretty amazing.
But, 4 verses. It happens, it doesn't ask, I'm not asking it to be a bunch of different things. And I think that goes back to that 3-minute monologue thing of, there's only so much you can ask of one song. Make another one to say the other thing.
I agree with that too.
Bring let it go. Let it be its piece, and let it have its one shift.
Yeah, you don't have to put everything into the one thing.
Yeah.
You can branch out.
I have one more question. I gotta ask one more question.
Make it quick, because I've been trying to. I have to go teach.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
So I have one more question, and it's: do you ever find that mastering or learning a new technical device or tool, like you put it, as inspiring a new song or a new venture or a new direction in the creation process for you?
Absolutely, and that's why I learned all the damn instruments and different styles of music. And I get done with the record, Lynn Drury said that to me when I started on Bourbon. She's like, now you're going to just do that? I said, well, I just made the record. Now I got all I kind of refill the well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to learn the artists I want to learn. But, and for this period, I've been getting vocal lessons with Guy Tim. I've been getting together with Tim Robertson from Amanda Shaw's band on getting some little guitar help. And I've been learning all of these other writers and things, and like learning more about Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen. People I always admired, but I hadn't put the time in. And I'm just getting back to the writing. And rather than be frustrated with the writer's block, like do some work, refill some things, build your talents, and then you that's the way it should be, I think. And if I can't do something that I want to hear in the song, then I got to learn how to do it.
I love the idea of refilling the well, though. That's a fantastic way to put it.
Well, like I said, I have to teach today, and I gotta get out of here. So I want to wrap some things up. First off, thank you so much for coming on, Ted.
My pleasure.
And what is coming up for you next? What do you got going on? It's going to be, this will come out on Valentine's Day, so it'll be leading up to Mardi Gras and the rest of February. Is there something, opportunities for people to see you? I'm sure there are.
See, when can you see me again after this comes out?
Yeah, so this will be Valentine's Day. What happens after that?
I am at Madam Vic's one Thursday a month. That's going to be this week, and then it'll be March, well, it might be till March 23rd, I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, I be over at Mobile on March 4th for a festival.
Okay.
Do
you have a place where, do you have a centralized website or just a social media thing?
ted.hefko.net.
Okay, sweet.
Find me on there. Official Ted Hefko on Instagram.
Okay.
I put all that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a huge amount on the calendar this next month, so
hey, if you're
nothing
around,
particularly to plug.
We're playing on the 17th, the Friday before Fat Tuesday at 3090, 7:30, 10:30. So if anyone listening can come, but Ted, if you want to come sit in, bring your horn.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have a guitar on stage, so we don't have an amp ready, so you couldn't bring a guitar. But if you have a sax, we can use my.
That's more fun sitting in an instrument for sure. You don't have to bring all the wires.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was gonna say sax is easier. So if you or clarinet, fuck it, who knows? But whatever you want, but. Saxophone would fit well. You can sit in for as much as you want, honestly, or one song.
Until I don't know the arrangement, but I'm staying out of the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say. There's all. Yeah, okay. You wanted to sit in for original, but yeah. So great. Well, I really appreciate. What a stimulating musical conversation today. Actually,
I hope so. I hope we didn't go too far in the weeds.
Well, honestly, and I also think that maybe your path. You're saying you're not sure. Maybe it's the songwriting stuff and trying to sell that stuff to the people in Nashville. You are economical. You have a good sense of songwriting about you and the lyricism and where things fit. Maybe that's maybe that's the next.
We'll see what happens.
I really hope so. I think that'd be fucking cool.
And I'm a kind of a Benjamin Buttons type of person, and I've gotten older. I've finally learned to just, no, this is working now. Go there, and when that stops working, then you find the next thing.
That's a great lesson. I think that a lot of people could learn.
I don't have to predetermine the rest of my life anymore than I have to predetermine the song. So,
That's great. Well, Ted, everyone check out Ted Hefko and Ted Hefko and the Thousandaires. You can find him on Apple Music and iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff. And all right, everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And stay crooked.
I like that.